Every day, we coexist with the presence of evil, bearing witness to the darkest facets of human behavior and the suffering inflicted by individuals upon others, a grim reality embedded in our society. In Criminal Investigators, we will explore this shadowy side of humanity, bringing the most perverse crimes to the screen and delving into the minds of those who commit such heinous acts. I am Diego, and today I present another case. This is the story of Daniel Cameron, born on March 28, 2010, to a Dutch New Zealander family residing in the rural village of Atatu, situated in Southland, approximately 25 miles northwest of Invercargill. His parents, Ryan and Amy, cherished their heritage and family traditions. Amy's first impression of her newborn son was that he resembled Benjamin Button. Like the character played by Brad Pitt, Hunter looked like a tiny old man. From an early age, mother and son shared a profound bond. Hunter would eagerly wait all day for Amy to return home so they could spend as much time together as possible. When he began attending kindergarten, Amy volunteered at the local early childhood center, known as Play Center, to maximize her time with him. When Hunter turned 5 and enrolled in Atatu School, where Amy was a teacher, he often snuck into her classroom just to be near her. They were inseparable. Hunter was Amy's world, and she was his. Sharon King, Hunter's maternal grandmother, noted their relationship was so intense that it bordered on unhealthy dependence. Hunter's aunt and godmother recalled him as an exceptionally loving, kind and sensitive child whose vibrant personality brought joy to everyone around him. Friends and family described him as a happy, empathetic child who once cried for 2 nights over a puppy he saw in a pet store because it didn't have a home. Hunter enjoyed spending time with friends, riding his bike, and reading books, particularly Captain Underpants, Dog Man, and other similar stories. He was also passionate about creative video games like Minecraft and Roblox, in which he excelled. However, the once harmonious relationship between Ryan and Amy began to fray, ultimately resulting in their separation. Amy admitted in an interview that this difficult period brought her and Hunter even closer, but she soon realized that their mutual dependency needed to be addressed for their well-being. Amy remarried Jaden Morris, who became Hunter's stepfather and managed to integrate himself into the close-knit duo. In 2019, the couple's new union brought news of Amy's second pregnancy, and by late October, she was 28 weeks along. By then, they had developed a routine with friends, visiting a local bar every Wednesday to play pool, grab a bite, or socialize. To ensure Hunter, who was 9 at the time, was taken care of, they arranged for a babysitter from among their acquaintances. A friend from their group recommended her teenage son, Daniel Cameron, who had become the family's regular babysitter. At 15, Daniel was tall and stocky, with mild autism. He was known to be introverted and quiet, having faced bullying and rejection during elementary school, which led him to defend himself verbally against aggressors. A transfer to another school appeared to resolve these issues, but he remained sensitive and prone to anger. Daniel lived with his mother, whose name is unknown, and no information was available about his father, suggesting he may not have been present in Daniel's life. Despite this, Daniel was responsible and had become Hunter's favorite babysitter, with Hunter even capturing their fun times together in his drawings. According to Amy, she had entrusted Hunter to Daniel's care at least 50 times, though other accounts suggested closer to 10. Growing up in Atatu afforded Hunter the experience of living in a peaceful town where most residents knew each other. It was easy to make friends and trust people, as shared values and mutual respect were the norm. Crime and disturbances were rare, fostering a sense of safety. October 30th, 2019, began as an ordinary Wednesday. As usual, Amy and Jaden went out to the bar with friends. Daniel arrived at Amy's house around 6 in the evening, accompanied by his mother. Amy kissed Hunter goodnight and left for the pub with Jaden. Later, Daniel's mother also joined them at the establishment. During the evening, Amy texted Daniel to check if there were eggs in the kitchen to decide if she should take advantage of a store promotion. Daniel promptly replied, confirming there were none. Amy found nothing unusual in her messages with Daniel that evening. The pub was only a few minutes from her house, and she always remained vigilant, ready to return home at the first sign of any issue. Daniel was known for promptly answering all of Amy's messages while watching Hunter. If Daniel was ever delayed in responding, Amy would always call him. The last message they exchanged was at 7:57 p.m. that evening. Over 2 hours later, around 10:10 p.m., Amy felt it was getting late and decided to check in. She called the babysitter to make sure Hunter was asleep, but this time there was no answer. Alarmed, she rushed home. Amy arrived shortly before 10:30 p.m. and immediately went to check on her son. As she approached Hunter's room, she noticed his bed was empty and Daniel was nowhere in sight. A strange unease gripped her. Turning to leave, she paused, pushed the door fully open, and saw Hunter lying on his back on the floor at the foot of the bed. A large knife protruded from his stomach, blood surrounded his mouth, and his face was pale. The dreadful realization struck her son was dead. Panicking, Amy ran out of the house screaming. Her mind was racing, bombarded by an overwhelming array of thoughts. An inner voice whispered that Hunter had been gone for some time. Worry for Daniel surged through her. She feared he too might be dead, injured, or even kidnapped. Hearing Amy's cries, neighbors began to gather outside her home. She kept repeating that her son was dead, that he had been murdered. Amid the chaos, she shouted that her home was now a crime scene and warned everyone not to touch anything. Outside Amy's residence, Daniel's mother sat in her car, waiting for him to return so they could go home together. When she heard Amy's screams, she rushed into the house and saw Hunter lying lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood. Realizing the gravity of the situation, she called a neighbor who worked as an ambulance technician. Daniel's mother knew her son was still alive, as he had sent her a text apologizing and asking her to pick him up. That message was a relief for her and challenged all the theories swirling through Amy's mind. Despite wanting to believe otherwise, Amy couldn't help but feel a crushing guilt, blaming herself for trusting Daniel and leaving Hunter alone with him. Between sobs, she repeatedly told herself she had failed her son. Emergency personnel and police officers soon arrived at the scene, confirming what everyone feared: Hunter was dead. The initial report indicated that he had been strangled and stabbed. Amy could not fathom how such a tragedy could have happened and began to think that Daniel, the trusted babysitter, had chosen to harm her defenseless child in such a horrific way. As more chilling details emerged over the following hours, speculation spread about what Daniel might have done after committing the crime. Some suggested he may have acted in a moment of rage, though this in no way excused his actions. To Amy, the attack felt premeditated. News of the incident spread quickly, prompting neighbors and Daniel's classmates to discuss the shocking event. For the residents of Otoe, such violence was unheard of. One of the family's neighbors, Carl Jackson, recounted receiving a phone call from Hunter's father, Ryan, on Wednesday night. Ryan was inconsolable, crying as he confirmed the devastating news his son had been killed and called to verify its truth. Carl Jackson expressed his devastation over the tragedy, struggling to find words to describe the profound pain and revulsion he felt regarding Hunter's death. He remarked that Hunter was an irreplaceable child whose cheeky smile could light up any room and would be missed by many. Some witnesses reported to authorities that they saw Daniel walking alone down a street around 7:40 p.m., roughly 10 minutes after the estimated time of the murder and 17 minutes before the last text exchange between him and Amy at 7:57 p.m. Daniel's own messages to friends later that evening revealed his turmoil. At 8:20 p.m., he sent a brief note on Facebook Messenger to one friend, simply stating, "Help." Minutes later, he sent a message on Snapchat to 3 peers, asking them what they would do if they killed someone. At 8:35 p.m., he messaged another friend on Facebook, asking what their opinion of him would be if he committed murder and requested a direct answer. Finally, at 10:01 p.m., about an hour and a half later, he called a classmate to inform them he would be absent from school the next day. Neighbors recalled seeing Daniel walking on Riverson Road at around 11 p.m., before being picked up by two men in a car. He arrived home around 11:29 p.m., only to be arrested by police shortly after. Authorities noted that Daniel refused to cooperate, admitting guilt but declining to participate in a formal interview or provide details regarding the incident or his motives. Following his arrest, Daniel underwent evaluations by both a psychologist and a psychiatrist, who confirmed that he was mentally stable. A review of his history showed no indications of prior violent behavior. Inspector Mike Bowman, commander of the Sutherland area, held a press conference about the case but withheld the names of those involved due to their status as minors. The identity of the perpetrator was only disclosed at the conclusion of the legal proceedings against him. On the night of October 30th, police were called to a property in Otoe due to the suspicious death of a child. it was reported that the alleged killer would appear in juvenile court. Authorities emphasized that this was an isolated incident, and there was no ongoing threat as sirens echoed through the quiet streets and emergency officials swarmed the area, leaving the community shocked and alarmed. The police acknowledged that Otor was a close-knit town and wanted to reassure residents that they were safe. The investigation had just begun, and the police cordoned off 2 homes for examination, announcing that the inspection might extend for 3 days and that the overall investigation could last for weeks. Meanwhile, a team of specialists provided support to the families, neighbors, and Hunter's school, where the children were deeply traumatized by the sudden loss of their friend. Andrews, president of the Otor Community Board, noted that many residents had contacted him in disbelief over the tragic news. Pamela Hapkers, owner of the local gallery, echoed that such incidents were unheard of in their community. Police presence remained even after the initial inspections concluded. Hunter's death marked him as the 11th child under 14 to be killed under suspicious circumstances in New Zealand in 2019. 8 days after the crime, approximately 600 people gathered at the Otor Sports Complex for a memorial service in Hunter's honor. The normally busy Main Street came to a halt, blanketed in an unusual silence. The family requested donations to help cover funeral costs in place of flowers, placing a donation box at the entrance of the venue. Each attendee received a pamphlet with heartfelt words from Hunter's grieving mother, who expressed that if she could choose among all the children in the world, she would always choose him. To honor Hunter's fear of the dark, Amy placed small lights inside his coffin so that it would glow even when the lid was closed. On November 1, 2019, the young babysitter accused of taking Hunter's life appeared in Hill District Court to face murder charges. Following the law, the judge ordered the suppression of all identifying details about both the young victim and the defendant, including their ages and genders, as they were minors. Additionally, a report with a mental evaluation of the defendant was requested to be prepared for the sentencing date in March 2020. Daniel pleaded guilty, and 8 months after the crime, he appeared in the Superior Court of Invercargill on Monday, June 29, 2020, before Judge Rachel for his sentencing hearing, as reported by the press. The courtroom was filled to capacity, with about 50 people occupying the public gallery and others placed in an adjacent room where they could follow the proceedings via audio link. News reports highlighted that, on this day, the identity of the accused would finally be revealed, drawing the attention of the entire Otor community. Daniel entered the courtroom escorted by 2 police officers and remained silent and expressionless throughout the session. Crown Prosecutor Ricky presented a summary of the case, including the autopsy report, which revealed that Hunter had suffered 3 significant stab wounds to the torso and chest. Additionally, there were marks on his neck consistent with asphyxiation and a moderate head injury. The coroner determined that Hunter's death occurred within the first 90 minutes of being left in Daniel's care. The prosecutor emphasized that the murder of the 9-year-old boy and the fact that Daniel left the victim alone after the attack were aggravating factors. Defense attorney Bill Dawkins stated that, up to that point, the defendant had not disclosed what drove him to commit such an unimaginable act, a question that even psychologists and psychiatrists who evaluated him could not answer. No behavior or event prior to the crime indicated any propensity for violence from Daniel. Dawkins assured the court that the teenager deeply regretted taking Hunter's life. When asked if he wanted to address the victim's family, Daniel expressed remorse. During the hearing, he listened intently as the victim's loved ones read their impact statements, each conveying the profound grief and loss they felt. Hunter's loved ones, including his mother, Amy, his grandfather Alistair, his godmother Aunt Mendy, and his grandmother Sharon, attended the hearing wearing sweatshirts featuring the game Hunter had been so passionate about. Amy, holding a picture of Hunter in a yellow frame, stood supported by her husband, who hugged her, trying to give her strength as she prepared to speak. She wanted the world to understand the devastation caused by her son's death, how traumatic it had been to find him lifeless, with a bloody mouth and a knife plunged into his abdomen. The overwhelming sense of loss was beyond words, and Amy struggled to explain how she had managed to keep going. She described Hunter as her other half, her world, and her reason for living. Every day she regretted leaving him in Daniel's care that fateful night and confessed she could never forgive her son's killer, a young man in whom she had placed all her trust. Amy recalled that at the time of the crime, she had been pregnant. a circumstance that gave her the strength to speak out. She accused Daniel of robbing her unborn child of the chance to meet his older brother, just as he had robbed Hunter of the opportunity to become the scientist he had always dreamed of being. To her, Hunter would never have done anything to provoke harm. He had trusted Daniel and never imagined he was in danger. Amy's heart was consumed with hatred for the murderer, and she expressed a hope that he would remain imprisoned forever. She made it clear that Hunter's death was not the result of an impulsive act, but a brutal, deliberate decision made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She asked the judge to disregard the defendant's age when sentencing. In a statement read on behalf of Hunter's father, the struggle of daily life without his son was shared. He thanked the judge for the support he had received from those who helped him stay strong through the unimaginable grief. He described Hunter as a special child who had touched the lives of many, someone he was deeply proud of. He believed his son was in a better place now, smiling and at peace. Hunter's aunt, Meandy, expressed how deeply unfair it was that the killer had been given another chance at life, while her nephew's future had been stolen from him forever. Mandy expressed all the hatred she felt toward Daniel for what he had done, openly stating her desire that he experience the same pain and suffering that had been inflicted on her family, leading them to this courtroom. Sharon King, the victim's maternal grandmother, also shared her sorrow over the brutal loss of her grandson, emphasizing that no one deserved to die in such a horrific manner. She believed Daniel had murdered Hunter in cold blood, fully aware of his actions, and that this deliberate cruelty should not be overlooked during sentencing. Hunter's paternal grandfather, racked with guilt, spoke of the tormenting thoughts that plagued him. He imagined his grandson dying alone, terrified, at the hands of a monster, with no hope of help. He could not fathom how anyone could live with such a burden, nor could he understand why his beloved grandson had been taken from him in such a cruel and senseless way. Before announcing the sentence, Judge Rachel commended Amy for her bravery in reading her statement, acknowledging the immense pain she had shown. The judge recognized that the killer had to understand the irreversible devastation his actions had caused, not only to the victim's family, but also to the entire community of Utah, which had been shattered by the crime. The judge noted that the defendant had no prior criminal record and was generally seen as a calm individual, but had demonstrated difficulty managing stress and provocation, often becoming angered by even the most trivial matters. The report also revealed that Daniel did not suffer from any diagnosed mental health issues, though his personality exhibited mildly autistic traits. Referring to a report about the events, the judge highlighted that Hunter had enjoyed spending time with Daniel and had been playing with his babysitter before the tragic incident. Daniel himself had admitted that Hunter was particularly upset that night due to an air horn, which emitted a loud and incessant noise that he could not silence, despite repeated requests. The judge made it clear to the defendant that if the air horn incident was the motive for the murder, he had a significant anger management problem that needed to be addressed before he could be considered fit for rehabilitation or sentencing. Although the defendant had expressed a desire for parole, the judge stated that he was not eligible for parole at this time. The defense attorney argued that Daniel had apologized, but the judge did not see any genuine remorse, which she believed could be attributed to a reflexive response rather than a true understanding of the gravity of his actions. The judge sentenced 16-year-old Daniel Cameron to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 11 years. This sentence considered the juvenile's potential for rehabilitation, but it was clear that Daniel would not be released until the parole board determined that he no longer posed a risk to the community. As expected, the decision left the family and the audience dissatisfied. Immediately, some of those present reacted with anger, shouting insults at the defendant from the public gallery, reminding the judge that she was dealing with a murderer. A similar scene unfolded outside the courthouse, where people booed Daniel as he was escorted to the vehicle that would take him to prison, and some onlookers shouted derogatory remarks. Online, the decision sparked outrage, with users criticizing the justice system for what they perceived as an inadequate punishment. Detective Mark McClay, in charge of the case, stated that while the ruling marked the conclusion of the trial, it did not bring an end to the family's pain. He acknowledged that the outcome, though significant, could not undo the loss of a 9-year-old boy. The family issued a statement expressing that, despite the passage of time, they were still awaiting an explanation for what had happened. They noted that while the verdict was a step forward in their long journey, no punishment would ever restore their son's beautiful smile or alleviate the daily sorrow they felt in his absence. Hunter's room remained untouched, a shrine to his memory. His faithful pet still slept in his bed, and the walls still displayed his pirate drawings, certificates, and an alphabet poster, silent reminders of a life that was stolen too soon. A dream catcher hung above his Spider-Man pillow, and his room stood as a poignant reflection of the love and emotions felt by his family. Hunter will always be loved and remembered by those closest to him, and despite the immense void left by his tragically short life, he will forever be a source of celebration and remembrance. And now, dear audience, this concludes another investigation. What are your thoughts on today's case? We would greatly appreciate reading your comments, as your opinions on the cases are invaluable to us. Please remember to always express your views with the utmost respect for the victim, for other viewers, and for us as we review them. Before you leave, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, feel free to share this video if you think someone you know might be interested in it. We'll see you in another investigation. Until then, take care and God bless.